Hello racers! Today I have a deck for you. It's one of the 4 decks that we'll be presenting in the next couple of videos that we've been working on that can be introduced to the meta but are not part of it yet. Decks that we think are strong but are definitely underappreciated at the moment. So let's start with deck for today, which is HanRed. So Han1 Red, as many people know, is one of the most powerful leaders that we had since set 1. Definitely the yellow version was the most popular, especially at the end of set 2. Right now, I think Han Yellow is a lot underplayed, and I think it's a really good counter to the hard control that is on the rise. But the red version also have a little bit a different matchup spread than the yellow one, and have some additions that yellow is missing. So let's talk about the most important part. Why do we want to play the red one? And it's the units. Basically, you gain access to one of the most powerful 2, 3, 4, and 5 mana drops in the game. And because Han can sneak them up before they should be played, they have a really big staying power. For example, Poe without ECL is not that strong, but if you manage to play it on turn before, it suddenly is as big of a threat as it was played in Sabine or Han2 ECL, because he is threatening a lot of damage and it's actually quite hard to remove on 4 resources. Okay, but because we chose red, we are missing on some key parts that what was making the Han powerful before. For example, the yellow version, of course, we have Cunning, Body, and Bouncer. And I think at this moment in the meta, having access to Cassian and K2 is a little bit more important than Cunning. Even though Cunning is one of the most powerful cards in the game, it is extremely strong in racing, but it has a big minus that is Django. And Django can tap your unit that you buffed. He doesn't really care about a discard. And yeah, if you exhaust and buff and he tapped in response, you didn't play a unit. So the next turn he will have the stronger board than you. I think the biggest card that I miss in this deck is Bouncer. Bouncer is an extremely powerful addition to any mono yellow deck. But we still have some cards that can mimic its power. We still play Waylay, and Poe is definitely a card that in some ways may be stronger. For the green version, yeah, we are missing resupply, which makes Han. If you resupply in Han 1, it's really hard to lose, but it's extremely inconsistent, at least at the moment. And we are also missing our endgame, so Ewing reinforcements, home ones. But the way we built the deck was more focused on aggro, so we are not actually missing the endgame because we swapped it for more burst damage, and 7 drops are still really powerful in yellow and red, so that's not actually that big of a deal. Okay, so what's the game plan for the deck? And it's basically to be extremely consistent and playing really powerful 3-drop on turn 1. So right now we have access to 9 3/5 minions on the ground and Millennium Falcon that can answer a lot of aggressive space decks. So our turn 1 is, I think, the best turn 1 in the game at the moment. And we are trying to snowball from that play. So turn 1, I think the best turn 1 play you can do is Millennium Falcon. The only exception is versus Django. Versus Django you actually want a 3/5 minion, and it's because Django doesn't really have any way to kill this minion. Even with Tarkin Town they would need to ping it twice. So then you can buff it or just attack face for free, which is really big when you will be doing it for more than one turn. Turn 2, we also want to drop a card and play a 4-drop because we have access to really powerful or annoying plays. K2 is one of the most busted 4-drops in the game. Even if he dies instantly, he always does something, at least 3 damage or discard. Kira is a card that on turn 2 is really annoying to play against because it's really easy to either block your opponent from playing something on the 4 resources, because you will be using your Han ability, so it's really rarely you will be able to block their play on the second turn. But looking at their hand, it's not always easy to keep a lot of plays on 4 mana, because most decks doesn't really play that many 4-drops. And if you block their only 4 mana play, it can completely snowball the game. And Sabine Wren, it's actually a unit from the new set that I completely misjudged. I thought she's too slow and her ability is too inconsistent to be relevant. But the fact that she can't be attacked the turn she's played is actually a really big deal, especially in the aggro deck that we are. And her ability in the deck we've built has about 60% of going on. You should never rely on it, but sometimes the 6 damage to a sentinel that she can do, or killing something and going phase, makes the world of difference. Okay, then we have the rest of the game. Because we most likely dropped all our cards before turn 3, so on turn 3 we also want to use Han's ability and play Poe, or play Cassian from Smuggle for 5 to just push as much damage as we can. But because of it, we will most likely be out of cards. Even most hands always play in the way that on the 4th turn you can put down a resource, deploy Han, and attack with Han and play a 7-drop. We will have access to that play, but more often than not, on Han deploy, we want to play Jetpack or Jetpack with Blaster, or Tech with Heroic Sacrifice from Smuggle. Or even just play Millennium Falcon from Smuggle just to put another threat on the board, because if we can manage to have many threats on the ground and space, this deck will always be able to push more damage than your enemies expect. Of course, we still have access to Tech and DJ combo. It's not as powerful as in Mono Yellow, mostly because you cannot play DJ for 7. DJ now costs 9, but even for 9, it's still really relevant versus hard control. And Tech is just amazing. If your opponent doesn't kill him immediately, you may overwhelm them with amount of cards that he is providing. I will also want to mention one really important card, which is Jetpack. Jetpack is, I think, one of the most important cards in the current meta. It stops Django Fett really effectively because of the shield. Django is not able to tap your units. And the 2 damage quite often is enough to push the threshold of your opponent's life to the point that you can just finish the game from hand in the future turns. And this is the part that is the most important. This deck has so many ways to push damage that if you manage to play a 3-drop turn 1, play a 4-drop turn 2, attack phase with both of them, you will probably be able to finish the game in a turn or 2. For example, K2 plus Heroic Sacrifice, it's a 9 damage combo. Surprise Strike, many people it happened to them that this, even though it's it's 2 mana for 3 damage and you need to have a unit on board, you can play it from Smuggle with tech. You can make it so your opponent cannot really count how many actions they can take. It's the same with Cassian and Millennium, because they are entering ready. Your opponent cannot basically take initiative when you have open mana, because you can always have more damage behind your resources or in hand. We are also playing mostly heroic cards. For a cause I believe in this deck doesn't always deal for damage. It's most likely a 3 damage card. But it also has a really, really big upside, because when you look at the top 4 cards, and if you are playing it on 6 resources, and you, for example, dealt 3 and also found a Hotshot Blaster, if you played any Smuggle card this turn and you put the Hotshot Blaster on top, you will basically gain a card, because this deck has so many Smuggle cards, and if you put a Smuggle cards if you play a Smuggle and put another Smuggle in a card, in this deck it's basically drawing a card. And this means that For a cause is not always played just to push damage. Yeah, it's the best part of the card, but finding the something to finish the game, or just finding another Smuggle card to put on top, especially in the longer games, can be a really big benefit. Okay, and now the big reason why many people play Han. For me, in the red version, it's not that important. I often deploy Han, attack with him, play Millennium, and even if Han is immediately killed, then I can use his ability on the next turn and play a 7 mana card. We play 3 copies of Han Solo. I think it's just a perfect combination with other Han, especially now that not all the leaders have 7 health, and Han leader can kill really, really important threats. But we also play 1 copy of Enfys and 1 copy of Mace Windu, which can answer a variety of different threats. Mace can clear wide board and still go face. And Enfys is one of the big anti-sentinel cards in the set. She bounces every Obi-Wan, every villager protectors that you can encounter, and those cards can be a really trouble for HanRed. And now the big deck that is on the rise at the moment, so hard control. Versus hard control, you can't basically empty your hand at the start, because if you play a 3-drop on turn 1 and the Power of the Darkside it, you are not in the greatest spot. But that's why we have sideboard, and that's why we can play a little bit differently. Versus hard control, you don't need to rush, you don't need to put them on the clock or overwhelm them on the board. You just need to play on curve, and when hard controls uses resources to deal with your cards, if you find a way to sneak in tech and they can deal with it, playing DJ is most likely game ending, because hard controls at the moment doesn't really ramp, and for them losing a single resource may be like destroying their whole game plan. The second part is, in this matchup, you need to be extremely careful to not allow hard control to draw cards. So Pershing is a must kill. Deathmark is something that you really need to avoid, and it's much better to waylay your own unit than allow Bosk to gain access to 4 cards, unless you already have a big board, because this is also something that you can trick them into. If you manage to play a few units and they waste mana playing cards like Deathmark, if you then DJ them, steal their resources, even though they will have all the cards in the world, if they don't have mana to overcome the amount of cards you played, you still can finish the game quick enough, then they are able to destroy and heal. Also, one other big thing is that Bosk is a 6 mana leader, so Han unit can always insta-kill it. Han unit can also insta-kill Childsen, so this is one of the cards you should never discard. And we are playing in the sideboard Sparks of Rebellion, Fangs, and Black One. So we put 8 cards from our sideboard dedicated to this matchup, because I think it's one of the matchups that will happen more and more in the meta, and we pre-built our deck to beat aggro and mid-game in the main board, so we can allocate a lot of resources to beat aggro, to beat control in the sideboard. Spark can be used in many different matchups, but we are not having it in main because we mostly want to focus on being really aggressive. But versus decks like Anakin or Palpatine that can go a little bit longer, or decks like Cad Bane that will most likely remove a lot of your threats, you can put it and just remove the biggest hitters. Fang Fighter is basically only for Bosk and other hard controls, because even aggro decks stopped using cards like Darksaber. And Black One is the same. I don't think I would put the card in any other matchup than hard control because it's too slow versus most matchups, but versus like Palpatine Blue, I could also see it hitting the board, because then it allows you to play 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, 6-drop, and you gain access to the whole new ways of playing, because you can abuse the Han1 ability to the fullest. But the big issue with Black One is that 6 mana 4/4 is a terrible stat line, and even if you manage to get back your whole hand, it may be enough to put you so behind that the 3 additional cards will not matter. That's why it should only be put in your deck versus really slow matchups. Okay, so this is how the deck list is looking at the moment. So we are playing only one 2-drop in the deck with a unit. It's Sabine. I think it's the only unit that, if you have initiative versus some decks, she is better than playing a 3/5 unit. And she is also strong enough to be played in the later stages of the game because of her ability that she cannot be attacked if you have 3 different aspects. She often is a really annoying threat that your opponent can't really attack into, that can just push final damage when needed. Rest of the cards mostly was I've shown before. I think the only card that is really not shown before was Waylay, but 2 Waylays are, I think, like in the perfect amount. 3 was a little bit too many. I've too often drawn 2 of them, and you almost never want to draw Waylay. The funny thing is that in this deck, almost always Waylay was played for 5 resources from tech, not from hand. But versus some decks, Waylay is incredibly powerful. For example, it always blocks Sabine players from going Battlefield Marine Wing Leader, because the threat of bouncing the Battlefield Marine is like big enough, so many aggro players just will not play it. And Sabine without access to buffs is not that scary, and we are actually much faster than her. So yeah, this is how the deck is looking. I think the other card that I didn't mention is in the sideboard we are running 2 Luckies. Luckies is basically the card for Sabine matchup, because I still think it will be one of the most popular decks. So always sideboard should be dedicated to the decks that are popular. And even before sideboard, I think this deck is favored versus Sabine. Having additional answer is never a problem. And Lucky is just a perfect card versus Sabine, because most of her units have 3 attack, and it also kills Sabine on the same turn that she deploys. Yeah, so this is the deck. I've been playing this deck on Karabast and TTI recently. I think in about 50 games I have 94 or 95% win rate. The hardest matchup for this deck by far was Anakin, but with a few changes of the playstyle, I've managed to still make this matchup more than 50% win rate. So I think this is the deck that in the current meta is completely overlooked, can 100% caught many people off guard, and is strong enough to be brought even to the bigger tournaments. Yeah. Thanks everybody for watching, and please comment what cards you think are missing from the deck and what would you change. We've tested many different versions of it, and this is the final one. I think it's a version 30 or 35. But I know there's a lot of really powerful cards that may seem really weird that they are missing. For example, Greedo, but because I wanted to mostly focus on consistency and playing this single play style with the deck, that's why this list is built in this way. And in the end, please comment of what decks you think we prepared next. Bye!